It's been interesting to me to see the amount of people who didn't realize that Avowed was actually set in an existing world based on an existing intellectual property that Obsidian has already done a couple of games in. Those games being Pillars of Eternity 1 and Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. Now, this game, Avowed, is going to be in a completely different playstyle because it's going to be a first person RPG experience, maybe some third person as well, I'm not quite sure, but it's not going to be the top down isometric that we saw from the first two games, which were very much built in homage to and after the Kickstarter stuff and everything else, in memory of the Baldur's Gate series that inspired all of these things to start, and where these guys all cut their teeth growing up as developers with Obsidian Entertainment. Going on from there to Neverwinter Nights and Knights of the Old Republic and, so many awesome games over the years. But yeah, Pillars of Eternity 1, Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire are set in a world called Eora, and the game Avowed is set in that same world using that same lore. And while I don't anticipate that you're going to need to know a ton about the existing world and everything else to be able to jump into this game and play it, because A, they're brilliant game developers, and B, given the richness of the worlds that Obsidian is known for making, I guarantee you there's going to be a ton of lore to discover in Avowed itself through, journal entries, book entries, quests, all these other things as you go through in the storyline. So the question today that we're going to be talking about is, should you play Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2? Like, are those required components to get the most out of Avowed? I would argue that yes, you should. If you like RPGs, then you should go out there and play Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. If you haven't already done so, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update from my channel. Join our Discord, check out the live streams, support in any way you can, super chats, super thanks, memberships, and beyond. We'll have more commercial stuff in the middle of the video, but for now, let's dive into Pillars of Eternity 1 and Pillars of Eternity 2 and why I think you need to play these games before you play Avowed. What can I say about Pillars of Eternity to explain it to someone who might not have ever played it? Probably one of the most story-heavy RPGs that I've played since the original, like, Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, Planescape days. This game is incredibly heavy on world building and establishing the races of Eora and also the unique classes they have. One of the brilliant things about Pillars of Eternity as a game is the fact that it's not only its own unique IP and its own world and its own lore and everything else, but they take that a step farther and they have fleshed out an entire tabletop system here. So they have an entire library of spells that are unique to this world and to this game and are based on these rule sets. So there's nothing from 5th edition here. There's nothing from Pathfinder. There is just the game and all of the things within it and that world and lore and everything else. So as you're going through the game, you're going to find that there's a complexity here underneath the hood. So there's tons of lore, tons of world building and everything else, but there's, like I said, those entire spell books full of spells that are unique to this world. You have unique monsters. Everything is sort of built from the ground up with this game as they established the world that Pillars of Eternity was set in. And I don't want to spoil anything for those of you who might not have ever played the game, so I'm not going to get into too many of the story elements, but let's just say that, it's one of the best stories that I've seen in the game in a very long time. It is fairly well voiced. There is a lot of missing areas where there's not as much voiceovers because of budget restraints, but they did an impressive job with what they got through Kickstarter and everything else. I would say that this game is quite possibly one. It's definitely up there in like the top three RPGs that I've played, like of this style, of this, old school. You've got 6 people in your party. You've got, your main character. It looks like the Baldur's Gate style Neverwinter Nights, that Icewind Dale style from back in the day. Um, and if you like that kind of stuff, then you're gonna love this game. Only this, not being officially D&D, their own thing. Like I said, once you get into it and get under the hood, there's all the mechanics in place, the story that's in place, and everything else. And I've found that this is also one of the games that has one of the best tiered difficulty systems I've ever seen. Being able to go from like the easy mode. And not have to worry about any of your race decisions or class decisions or the mechanics of the game, what are these, buffs and debuffs and everything else, and how do the timers work, and how do these spells work, and how does crowd control work, and oh, I need to have different weapons for blunt versus, piercing, so on and so forth. All that's there. And then as you crank the difficulty up, it's like, oh, now I have to start paying attention to the stats, and oh my, I actually need to worry about debuffing mobs and so on and so forth. So there's all the classic things from RPGs that you know and love built upon this rich world and this really complex RPG that can easily turn into, I would argue, 80 to 100 hours, especially if you play like the White Marsh and some of the other expansions that have come out since it was launched. There's a lot of cool stuff here. And there's a lot to go through. I would say that if you're just playing the base game, that's something you can do probably in about between 25 and 40 hours, just sort of depending on how, you know, what mode do you play on, easy mode, and if you're doing all the side quests or not. But it's a great, great RPG that gets you into the world of Eora and it explains everything to you from the top down. Commercial time, everyone. Huge shout out to the Guild Champions, who are our highest tiered membership here on YouTube. We've got Bubbleonia, Ancient Entity, Crazy's Relative, Remedy. Thanks so much for your support here on the channel. And of course, to all of our members who help keep me full time here on YouTube. Thanks so much for your support, for being here, for checking in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, super chat any live streams or premieres you see, super thanks any video uploads you see. Don't forget YouTube Shorts in that category as well. And hopefully, we'll see you in the next live stream. Don't forget the Discord. Links are down below. Let's get back to the video. Now, Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire is the first game turned up to 11. Like, they took all of the things that made the first game great, and then they added layers of complexity on top of that, including giving you a ship and allowing you to explore this amazing archipelago of worlds, the Deadfire archipelago, which is mentioned in the first game, but you don't actually get to see it until this game. But you get a ship. There is ship-based combat. You have a crew that's different from your adventuring crew, but can also be controlled in certain environments when you're like attacking other ships, and you can do like purely ship-based combat, or you can like board other ships, and it's your crew versus their crew plus your adventuring party. There's all this complexity with gear for your boat, so you can make it faster, have more hit points, bigger cannons, shoot different. There's all these things you can upgrade, and different types of ships and all these other things. So there's a whole layer of that going on in this game, on top of which you have this RPG that takes the story from the first game and also turns that up to 11. And we explore a completely different part of the world with its own unique cultures and customs and peoples, and a richness of not only storytelling in terms of the creation of all of these unique races and locations and the culture and lore behind all of them, but the history that's been going on behind here, the religion, the gods. This is a very nuanced story, and I'm trying not to spoil anything here in terms of, but I will say that both of these games have a very unique relationship with the religions of their world and the way that the pantheons came into existence and how they manage and rule over, or maybe that's not a good word to use, but just the way they kind of are over the whole world of Eora. All of these things make for the background tapestry that I'm looking forward to diving into even deeper within Avowed, because as good as Pillars of Eternity 1 is, Pillars of Eternity 2 is twice as long, twice as big, has way more voiceovers, way more conversation options, way more side quests, the ship-based combat, there's different factions that you can get involved with. There's just layer upon layer upon layer upon layer and layer of complexity here, plus higher levels, just these vast, sprawling skill trees and abilities and all these things. And all of that, again, is their own unique world. It's literally a massive tabletop game built within this RPG structure and this setting and everything, all when they have their own source book and all these other things. And it's like, I'm actually surprised there actually hasn't been a tabletop version of Eora yet, but I guarantee you it's coming in the pipeline at some point. So yes, Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire, even better than the first one. It definitely needs to be played, if only to explore the cultures and peoples of Eora so that you have a better understanding of what's coming in Avowed, but also just because it's such a great game, you really need to sink your teeth into this. This is another 100 plus hour investment of your time. Absolutely, and worth every second of it. Which brings us back around full circle to Avowed. Again, I don't think you need to play Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2 to be able to get the most out of what they're making here with Obsidian Entertainment. But I would argue that if you're someone who wants to understand the nuances of and the Easter eggs of and everything else that's going to be going on in Avowed, then you should absolutely go out there and play the first two games just so that you understand who the people are, who the cultures are, what I don't know where they're going in this game, so I'm assuming it's going to be a unique location. Um, but even though it's going to be its own place more than likely, based upon the fact that the first two games took place in different parts of the world, being able to understand who the peoples are and some of the existing cultures and the Egwethians and the gods and everything else and how the magic system works, all of that's an important element, I think, of the storytelling that's going to be going on in Avowed. And the more you know, I think the more rich that experience is going to be. So for my money, I would say get out there, play these games. They are absolutely available on Game Pass. So for those of you who are in it to win it, you can just go pick it up either on the PC or the console. I've played both versions. I would say that if you just want to do a simple story, play it on easy mode on the consoles, and it plays a lot like an ARPG. But if you want the complexity of what they built, and you want to play it like a top-down, turn-based game, then you can go ahead and play it on the PC. You'll have a lot more control. Also, in the second game in Deadfire, I forgot to mention this during the Deadfire part, they actually added a turn-based option for those of you who enjoy that. So, really looking forward to Avowed. Can't wait to play it. Love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down below. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, everybody. Support in all the ways you can. Hopefully, we'll see you in Discord in the next live stream. Cheers.